Welcome to the hybrid meeting of the Education, Skills and Wellbeing Committee on the 24th of October 2024. I am Councillor Rebecca Phillips and I will be chairing this meeting. Before we move on to the next agenda item, please note that this meeting will be recorded. Please can you ensure that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting? Can members and officers who are present in the chamber please use their microphones when speaking? When asked to raise your hand, can members who are virtually viewing this meeting raise your electronic hand, and members who are in the chamber please raise your physical hand. Now I will move on to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any to declare, please?
I can't see any, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. You will see the minutes attached at pages 5 to 14 of your agenda pack. If you feel that these minutes are an accurate record of the meeting, can I please have a proposer and a seconder?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Happy to second, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr. If members do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that these minutes are approved.
Chair, I can confirm those minutes are approved.
Diolch yn fawr. Moving on to part 1 of the agenda. Agenda item 4, to consider items from the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. We will now move to consider the reports as selected by this committee for consideration. Agenda item 4A, Youth Engagement Strategy. This report is for decision. Officers, would you like to add anything additional to the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing to add. Just to say that yes, this report is requesting that we adopt the youth engagement strategy that the officers to the left of me here have been working on for a number of months. A lot of engagement work has gone on. We need this strategy to fulfil our obligations, and because we believe it's really important to promote this multi-agency approach to supporting our young people. It's out of date. Welsh Government have introduced a new progression framework, and we want to make sure that we are reflecting that. So we're bringing this before you now. I'm not going to go through the report. It's all there. Hopefully it's quite straightforward, but of course we're more than welcome to take any, I'm more than happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr. And as always, thank you very much to officers for their work on the report. We do have a question that's been asked previous to this meeting. So can I call Councillor Reynolds, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to ask two things. I wanted to know, and I know there are action points within the strategy and, that's there, but none of them that I could see were smart action points. They weren't dated or anything like that. And I wondered if there was going to be a follow-on action plan and how that would be tracked and monitored going through for the future. Because I think that's really important. It's, having a strategy is one thing, but as you all know, I mean, you're all aware of this, and it's how we track and monitor it going through and make sure that we can, or rationalise why we're having issues, which could be the case because funding is a problem and things are difficult in that regard. The other question is, are we intending, because one of the things I picked up was that we're unclear about what the third sector provision is out there, how much there is, where it is, exactly where things are located. I know we're very aware of some things because I know we support them and do various things and provide whatever, as you'll be aware. But however, are we looking to map that at all so that we can look at how we can work with it? And can the LACs assist in this from social services? Thank you.
Okay. For the first one, I think the strategy does include what we would think would be the starter points for an action plan. I think it would probably be hoping to re-establish the Youth Engagement Strategy Group, and from that strategy, I would expect them to form their own action plan. I'd expect that to be monitored, and we would meet quarterly. It all would come under the Children and Young People's Plan as well. So I think it would be up to that group to establish that action plan and set those smart objectives as well. With the second point around the third sector mapping, the strategy is about the work we're doing with young people who are not in education, employment and training, and those young people who are at risk of youth homelessness. And I think we've got quite a good handle on what that third sector mapping on those two issues and those two areas of work look like. We've got well-established multi-agency groups that are more operational than strategic. But again, I would say it would be an action for the Youth Engagement Strategy Group once that's formed to set that as a plan going forward, really. Hope that helps.
Can I ask that we do consider mapping? Because I understand what you're saying about Neaths. However, it is very clear that all youth work impacts on that, and you don't know they're there. You don't know, if any youth club, any youth activity will engage or can engage with some of those people and provide support that can help them move forward. And therefore, I think it's really important that we're aware of that, and that we, given the shortness of funding and given the issues that we see at the current time, it would be worth actually trying to make sure we can work in the best way possible, save ourselves resources if we're aware it's that others are there that we can work with to achieve.
I'm more than happy to do that. I'm more than happy to put as a recommendation to the group once it's formed, is there? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Do you have any other questions on this report, please? I don't see anybody. So the recommendation is listed on page 16 of the agenda pack. Can I please have a proposer and a seconder?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Happy to second, Chair.
Lovely, diolch. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this decision is supported to Cabinet.
Chair, I can see no indications to the contrary, so this recommendation is supported to Cabinet.
Great, diolch yn fawr. Agenda item 4B, implementation of the Additional Learning Needs in Education Tribunal Wales Act 2018 in non-maintained settings. The report is for information. Officers, do you have anything to add to the report, please?
Thank you, Diolch, Chair. Just to give a quick overview, really, is to provide members, obviously, on the progress to date with the Additional Learning Needs Tribunal Act and Code. We've moved from a transformation period now to full implementation, and we're in our last year of bringing children and people into the new system. It has not been without its challenges in terms of new timescales, IT systems, communication, and seen an increase in complexity of need as well. But we've got an incredibly hard-working team. They've endeavoured to make this a smoother process for our children, people, families and schools, and strengthened relationship with our key partners as well. And happy to take any questions on that. Diolch, thank you.
Lovely, diolch yn fawr. Members, do we have any questions, please? Councillor Peter Rees, diolch.
Thank you, Chair. As a governor of a school with halves a unit in both schools, actually, a unit of special needs, the big issue is the numbers are growing in this within those schools, but the funding is not following. And I just wonder what can be done about that.
Sorry, Hayley, thank you. Or Zoe?
Councillor Rees, do you want to put your mic off, please? Thank you.
Sorry. No, we agree. It is a difficult situation. We are seeing an increase in numbers. It's quite hard to predict those numbers at times. We have complex movers in as well that are coming in. But we support schools as best we can. We have additional grants that we have from Welsh Government for ALN, and so where we can utilise those best to support our schools. And the wider support that we have in terms of training, our support services going in to help with provision and assessment. But we do acknowledge it is difficult while we continue to see this increase in need.
And also I'd like to add as well that we regularly keep our provisions under review. So an ongoing piece of work that we have within the inclusion service, and that sits predominantly under Sophie's area here, is we undertake what's called our planned places kind of pressures review and pressures report, where we consider all of the specialist provision across the authority. We're constantly reviewing the numbers, the movement between the need, the projected need that's coming through. And then we are trying to project the need going forward to make sure that it aligns with sufficient provision. So we do work really closely with Rhiannon's team, the SIP team there as well, in terms of trying to make sure that there is sufficient provision to meet need. We do acknowledge that there will be learners, for example, who may require an over and above kind of provision in terms of their needs. And where they are in mainstream schools, we offer additional outreach support. For example, we work really closely with our special school, Ysgol Maes y Coed, to make sure that the staff that are supporting those young people in those mainstream settings receive as much support, training and advice as they can as well. So
Thank you very much. And the Director, Andrew Thomas, would like to come in on this as well. Diolch.
Thank you, Chair. You're absolutely right, Councillor Rees, in terms of the pressure on school budgets per se. But if you just consider pupils with additional learning needs as a group of learners, ironically, I think those young people in specialist placements are probably the best provided for because of the way that the budgets for those learning support centres are sort of put together and calculated. They probably represent a better a calculation of the true cost of running that learning support centre than certainly the rest of the school would represent. So I think there's more of the actual costs in the learning support centre met by the budget than actually the wider population in school. So we have to think about additional learning needs in the round, not just in learning support centres. And as the officers have said, we keep those things under review all the time. There was a Welsh Local Government Association paper released just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm looking to my right now to Mr. Jones to jog my memory. But that detailed the pressures in public services, in sort of local government, and of course it referenced huge pressures in adult social care. We're all aware of those, but it also referenced I can't remember the period of time it was talking about, but I think it's something like over £100 million worth of unfunded pressures in education in Wales. And the main reason for those unfunded pressures was the increased incidence of additional learning needs in our schools. Now, in Neath Talbot, we are seeing those particularly in our early years. So I don't think we can look at additional learning needs, the problem with additional learning needs being in our learning support centres. I think arguably in our special schools and our learning support centres, there's probably less financial pressures on those particular aspects. But of course, they can't be treated in isolation, because if we can't meet the needs of our young people within those specialist provisions, they have to go out to county. And there is pressure in our out of county's budget, as Mr. Jones and I were discussing just probably half an hour ago, and members will see that very soon coming through in the monitoring reports. And of course, there's pressures in the overall education budget, and the vast majority of pupils with additional learning needs, of course, are in mainstream. So we've got to think about meeting the needs of those young people in the entirety within the education funding, not just within the learning support centres. But obviously, the point you make around funding is well made and absolutely right, and it's been recognised by the Welsh Local Government Association across Wales. It is certainly not a Neath Talbot phenomenon.
Thank you very much. I've got the Cabinet Member, Nia Jenkins, to come in as well, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think Mr. Thomas has just stolen my thunder. No, I was just to add to that, really. We know that the timelines for the ALN reform are very tight. The team have done amazingly well to do, to achieve what they have so far. But going back to the timeline from Welsh Government again, it's not fully funded. And if any of us have got any influence, I'm actually meeting with Lynn Eagle next week. But if anybody's got any influence to lobby, we do need to lobby that this is fully funded, because it's putting all the pressure on local authorities, and it's actually the pupils that are suffering because of it. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. And Hugh Jones, if you could come in, please. Diolch.
Yeah, diolch, thank you. Just to make members aware as well, I think, when the Welsh Government introduced this legislation, they actually carried out an impact assessment that concluded there would be no additional cost to local authorities in Wales. So they provided absolutely no funding through the revenue support grant mechanism. They provided some one-off grant funding, but in terms of core costs, there's been nothing. So I think something could be done around going back to them and saying, well, you need to review that impact assessment because clearly it's not correct. So just to raise that, Chair, thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, Hugh, thank you. And Councillor Reynolds, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to that, that this morning, for those that listen to the news and the radio, there is a review starting to take place in the UK of England schools with UK government. If the thing to put pressure on, I think, at the moment, given the budget issues for us all in Wales, not just local authorities, but the Welsh Government as well, is to put the pressure into the UK to make sure that review results in consequentials and doesn't do things within existing budgets, that it actually has some material outcome for us.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you. Great. Do we have any other questions? No. Okay, lovely. Thank you. So the report is for noting, and thank you very much, officers, for your input and everything that you do on this. Moving on to agenda item 4C, which is the item we've all been waiting for, I'm sure, is the budget. So the heads of services are going to take us through their areas and summarise their budget lines. And Andrew would like to just give us a little recap probably on the things facing us. Thank you. Diolch, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just sort of introduce this. So when, as corporate directors, we've all been asked to work with our heads of service, accountable managers to come up with the required budget saving proposals across the local authority. When we set about doing this, we adopted some guiding principles. And our guiding principles were, where possible, we would increase income, we would cover core costs against grant. And, for those members who've been around some time, you will know that that's a strategy we've been adopting for some time. We want to protect public services as far as possible, and we want to protect jobs as far as possible. And obviously those two things are linked. So we're involved now in a pre-consultation engagement exercise around our proposals. So we're not formally consulting on them yet. We do want to hear what members have to say about them. Certainly want to hear if members have any ideas about what we might look at other than what we've come up with. We do know that there's a major fiscal event on the 30th of October, and quite clearly our proposals at the moment are based around the intelligence that we have. As we get closer to the 30th of October, allegedly more and more information is being sort of leaked as to what we might experience or what Richard Reeves might say on the 30th of October, but we don't know. So we've based our proposals on what we know at the moment in terms of our best intelligence. And we've also made some assumptions around grants continuing, what the RSG level might look like, what our inflation increases might look like. So, as I say, the budget proposals we've come up with are centred around our guiding principles and our best intelligence. They are proposals at the moment. As I say, we're not even formally consulting on them. So in terms of the detail, some of the detail which you might want may not be available yet. If they do go forward and form part of official consultation proposals, then hopefully some of that detail will be worked up by that point, and this exercise today will help us understand what detail members might be looking for, so we can provide it should those proposals end up as a formal consultation exercise. So as you say, we now hand over to the head service. Chris Saunders is the first one, and in true fashion, he can't be with us today. He's making his way to Lithuania. But we do have Darren Evans, who is substituting for him, and Darren will take you through the Chris Saunders' area, and he and I will hopefully do a double act in terms of answering any questions. Over to you, Dar.
Great, thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone. Starting with Margam Park, the 150,000 saving for next year. This is part of a 3-year plan that we're already working on, making the savings this year. There's a report that will be coming forward to members in January with the new business plan for the park moving forward, and also looking at some parking options. We've done quite a lot of work and research, and we're estimating there is a significant amount of people that don't pay for parking at Margam Park and other car parks. So there'll also be a separate report on a proposal of a parking order and other options we're looking at for Margam Park to help us achieve the savings. We've introduced some new events. You see the Halloween event for the first time happening this year. Same again with some of the more pop concerts we introduced for the first time last year, and another proposed 2 next year. On top of that, there's been some staff movement, some progression, some people have flexible retirement, and there's also one post which has asked for retirement, which we're looking at. And at this stage, we're looking as if we are on schedule to achieve the 150 for 25-26. On the Art Centre, the 40,000 saving, this is aligned with the new cinema project currently going ahead. There's a slight delay. We're still on schedule for a full year trading, opening in the 3rd week, hopefully, of March, which will be a new 70-seater pod cinema. And again, it's in line with the business plan there and the savings incorporated with that. Within the leisure and Celtic Community Leisure, and this is the net saving, trading saving we're looking to achieve on it. It's been brought about by improvements in the trading position of Celtic as it stands, and also some of the reductions in costs. This is an ongoing project, and it is changing live, but it's to give Celtic an opportunity to trade as well in the savings. The second indoor leisure savings from the closure of Ponted House swimming pool. Just note on this, whether the full subsidy is not covered in the loss, there are some central costs and other costs which can't be fully recovered to make the full subsidy saving as it was in the first 6 months of this trading year. Moving on to Aberafan, this year we had the same. It's a 2-year project, 25,000 each year. We've managed to achieve this year with the introduction of a new catering kiosk in the Aquasplash being operated by Celtic Leisure, and also some fun fairs and other activities on it going forward for this year, next year, and the concessions. On ERS, again, there's 10,000 for next year. I think the important part of this and the good news story, this will take it into a profit-making facility, so there'll be no subsidy, and obviously looking to generate some more income. I would like just caution on this one, with so many budget pressures on schools. There are a number of schools looking at the SLA agreement they have with us in the service, and it seems to be one that is dropping. Quite considerably as well, the Swansea schools have also got the service, and the same effect is happening with their budget reviews as well. On libraries, and you can see the 10,000 there is mainly due to changing in technologies and a drop in demand, and the review and decision maker of looking to stop buying DVDs and looking at other technologies to do the same service. Okay. That's a very summarised overview of it. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Darren. Diolch yn fawr. Do you have anything to add at this point? Are you happy to take questions? Yeah, there we go. Great. Members, do we have any questions on those items? Councillor Peter Rees, please.
On the line at about homeschool transport line, a saving of £500,000.
Oh, sorry, Peter. I think we're going to go on to that next. If we can just take questions, thank you. Do we have any questions on the budget lines Darren just discussed, please? Councillor Reynolds, please.
Thank you, Darren. It's not an easy thing to do. There are some indications there of voluntary redundancies or vacancies not being filled, etc. I am concerned about some of them. I'm concerned about all of them, but concerned about Margam Park in particular, because the intelligence that I have from there is that it's not making its savings this year. So how is it gonna, it's gonna have a double whammy with or income generation requirements for next year. It's not managing it this year. So how's it going to meet that? So I have a concern about that. I'm hoping that you're right and that Pontardawe Cinema is on track, because it was delayed, and I know delays are sort of inevitable in building projects. So I hope that that's right. The indoor leisure trading improvements were based very much in the last year or so on staff morale. This council has just delivered a shot across the bows to that and staff morale. So, can we really rely to the level of 175k for that to continue? So, and I could go on. There are concerns about that. I know, all of us have got to be concerned about increased requirements on education, learning, resource services, but we will see. So, any response to any of that by cabinet member or by Darren or by Andrew would be great. Thank you.
Andrew, please. Thank you.
Yep. There's whenever you're predicting increased income, there's always risk, particularly somewhere like Margam Park, because if you have a stunning summer, we do really, really well. If it rains all through August, then the budget is just simply more difficult. If you put a special event on, and this is where pre-selling tickets is so important. It's very weather dependent, and similarly, indoor leisure is actually just the reverse of those two things. So I would say that those targets across that suite of services is broadly achievable as long as it doesn't get any worse, because there is some sensitivity built into it. So as an example, the £40,000 for Ponderdower Arts Centre, when you're putting a new 70-seater cinema in there with a remodeled catering bar, and I would expect us to secure far in excess of £40,000 worth of efficiencies from that. You're nodding. I would imagine you would expect exactly the same. But it's when we put the business case together, it's good. It's the first year trade-in, so we've got to be realistic. But I suspect we will overachieve there. Similarly, with Ponderdower Swimming Pool, the net saving for Ponderdower Swimming Pool is in excess of £233,000. We don't know exactly what it's going to be, because whilst we've reduced costs by closing the facility, we also will lose some income for obvious reasons, because whilst we've moved some of the big sort of the swimming club and school swimming, etc., and swimming lessons, there will be some casual swimming income which will be lost. Until we run a year, we don't know what that is. But I suspect, we will do better than the £233,000. I don't know what intelligence you're talking about in terms of Margam Park not achieving in-year savings. To be fair to you, I think, perhaps I shouldn't say this with my finance colleagues to my right, we do know that we have reported as part of the budget monitoring pressures in that area. And the problem with Margam Park is, as I say, we get to a point in the year where we've got far more certainty about how we're going to end at the year, because the summer months are so important. We don't get 12 months of the same income in Margam Park. We get, peaks and troughs, as I just described, according to the weather and the sort of events where we put on. And, with the Halloween event now and Illuminate, our predicted income, goes up through those months. So I don't think there's any predicted pressures in Margam Park this year, Darren, even though I know we have reported them, in fairness to you, up to this point through the budget monitoring reports. But I think the next report will reflect that there aren't any budget pressures in Margam Park. Yeah, so that hopefully will answer that question. So I think an ELRS is a problem, because there's a risk there, because, as Darren says, schools are under pressure, and as schools are under pressure, they will look to save as much money as they possibly can in those areas which aren't statutory, and ELRS is certainly one of those. But I mean, it's a fairly modest sort of target. So if we didn't get the £10,000, I don't think we would panic in too much. So I think we need to take the suite of savings in the round, and whilst we might not get £150,000 in Margam Park next year, we'll get the thick end of it, but there is some sensitivity within the other areas. So hopefully, and the main thing is, we make those efficiencies across those suites of services. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Nathan Goldup-John, please. Diolch, Nathan.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew's just briefly touched upon the road that I want to talk about, just ELLD, the indoor leisure savings. I was just wondering if when we go to the more detailed consultation, if we could have a further breakdown of that £233,000. I'm assuming it's energy costs, as he's touched upon, and potentially some early retirement or something like that. But if that could just be broken down further, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
I can actually give you some of the detail around that now, because I think I might have maybe not explained that. So we give a sum of, or as part of the management fee to Celtic Leisure to run Pontardawe swimming pool was in excess of £300,000. Due to the closure of it, we think we can next year have efficiencies of at least 233, because obviously Pontardawe Leisure Centre isn't operable, but there are some legacy costs until whatever happens to Pontardawe swimming pool happens. And as I just said, we will lose some income, even though the main activities have moved. And I suppose the big risk around that, and this is a positive, is there's a feasibility study out at the moment to find land and funding for a new pool. If that were to happen overnight, then we wouldn't be able to make that saving, because obviously we'd have to put the subsidy back in for the swimming pool, and then we'd have to revisit. But that, I don't think that's going to happen in the next 12 months in terms of operating a facility, because we wouldn't be able to build a new swimming pool in 12 months, to be blunt. But a risk going forward is, when we find land and funding to build a pool, that subsidy will need to be built back in. Hopefully, the world and the council will be in a better financial position by that point, and it won't be a problem being able to put that subsidy back in, because we will have to do that to operate it.
Thank you, diolch. Councillor Rydion Maisen, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, on the question of Aberafan seafront, I don't know if it's right to ask this question now, but it's on income generation point. Right at the top end of Princess Margaret Way, as it goes into Scarlet Avenue, we've got a vast area there that's of waste ground. Now, listen, it might well be earmarked for housing in the future, and if it is housing, well, all well and good. The more houses, more council tax, obviously. But in the meantime, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know, but I know because I'm a member of a cold water dipping club, and everybody cold water dips up that top end to have a coffee with the boys after. Now then, it's a terrible job parking up there. You've got a hell of a job to park, even in the winter, let alone the summer. I just wondered, is there anything we could do with that land? Because I know it's probably people have thought about it and probably thinking of travellers. If they can get in there, they take it over or whatever. You know what I mean? But I know quite a few people who got camper vans and they can't park hardly anywhere on the front. So unless they get a spot to pay for, and that's only for 2 hours. So in the meantime, couldn't we just hard stand in it and charge people to go on there, and get even perhaps electricity points for campers or something like that? I'm just thinking of something, on that line, It don't take much. It's just hard standing. You have to concrete it or tarmac it. Just some real good hard standing, Andrew, or something like that. I'm just thinking, has it ever been thought of?
I don't know about the hard standing and the parking, but what you have done, and it's good that you're thinking about alternative and income generation proposals, because trust me, officers do not have a monopoly on good ideas in this council. But what I think you have done inadvertently is sort of tripped us into the tension between the seafront master planning exercise, which is going on at the moment, and the local development plan, which Kerry is responsible for. So, Kerry, I'm going to throw a miss one to you now and see if you want to pick this one up.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Chair. Well, I've certainly not got any definitive answers, but I can give Councillor Maisen and members just an update on where the current position is. I think you're talking about the Tirmorfa site, which is, as you say, to the western end of the Sandfields and the seafront. You're absolutely right. It is currently allocated for housing within the current local development plan, and members will, of course, be aware that we're currently in the process of, or the early stages really of bringing forward the replacement LDP. Colleagues in our Estates and Regeneration Department and indeed our leisure colleagues are bringing forward the Aberafan Seafront Regeneration Strategy, and I think they're looking at options at the moment in terms of what future uses could come forward on that site. As I said, there is a debate going on at the moment in terms of whether it be housing, whether it be a commercial use, or indeed a mix of the two. I believe that the authority is close to putting the consultation version of that seafront strategy out for public scrutiny and consultation. So it'll be interesting to see what responses the authority gets back with that particular document. But that's all I can see to really clarify at this point in time, Chair. But I don't know whether Cabinet members have got a comment as well.
Thank you very much. Cabinet Member Ken Phillips, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add to what Andrew and Kerry have said, the consultation on the Aberavon Seafront strategy, including the part of the plan that is currently in the plan for that site, is live at the moment. There were public consultation sessions at the tail end of last week down in the leisure centre, but it's live until the beginning of November, I think, on the website. So if you want to put any comments in and contribute to that consultation, you'd be more than welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr. Councillor Mason, are you happy with that?
Yes, very good, Chair. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr. Andrew?
Rydian, if you can't find the consultation, come back to me and I'll make sure I can point you in the direction, because it would be, as a regular user, and I have seen pictures of you coming out of the water, you are quite clearly a regular user, so your views would be, really important as part of the seafront strategy.
Well, I give you one now then. Some hot showers be okay. Not bad then, but
Thank you. Do you have any other questions on those budget lines, please? No, I don't see any. So we'll move on to Rhiannon Crowhurst. Diolch.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not able to give you an awful lot of detail because almost all my savings relate to people's jobs and roles. I can give some comfort in that I'm pretty confident we'll avoid compulsory redundancies through looking at things such as flexible retirement, grant funding to fund some of the posts that we need rather than co-funding, and some sort of management or change work to make, to sort of increase roles, change the roles that people are doing in that way. We're also looking at full recharge of the cleaning costs. Now, this was on the agenda last year as well. We did recharge schools, but not for the full amount. So the option is there to recharge again, but this time for the full amount. Schools are aware that this is coming, I think, from last year. The difficulty we will have, of course, is that the school budgets are under such pressure already that, we're kind of robbing from one to give to another. So there's going to be a challenge around that. And to preempt Councillor Rees's question on transport, yeah, there is some internal work going on, internal work with consultants going on to look at reducing the home to school transport costs. That rests across the two environments, education and two directorates, education and environment, and a lot of the operational work is going on with environment colleagues. We're picking up on the education things, but there are discussions going on at the moment around that piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rees, did you want to come in?
It's one issue that parents are most concerned about, quite frankly, and I know as a governor that we get questions about individual children being not being catered for within the transport system that we have. I just wonder, with this 500,000, are the implications, and certainly for governors in schools and head teachers in schools, is it going to make it worse?
Andrew, do you want to come in?
Yeah, the review of home to school transport was something which came to cabinet, and cabinet agreed the sort of the parameters around what our own passenger transport and the consultants would look at. But I think most importantly, Peter, that review and the work that both parties are doing does not take any pupils' entitlement, doesn't change any pupils' entitlement at all in terms of having transport. Now, I suspect the issues you're getting and you're referring to as a school are around, if you like, around the margins, because the home to school transport policy is very clear as to who's entitled to transport. But of course, people's lives are not that simple. And there's lots of times in somebody's life when they may have, temporary issues and they find it very difficult to, get their children to school. And if you talk about secondary school, for instance, the distance where we start transporting children free of charge to a secondary school if they live more than 3 miles away. If you live 2.9 miles away, that's a long way, but you don't fall within the transport policy. And this is the same. This is Welsh Government's policy. You know that. It's difficult to get if you've got no car as a family, or we've got instances where all families are being rehoused because of they declare themselves homeless because they've been evicted by a landlord for what maybe legitimately. It becomes increasingly difficult for those young people. So the policy is a hard and fast policy, and that always brings problems because people's lives don't fall nicely into those sort of categories, do they? But I can say hand on heart that the review of home to school transport does not take an entitlement, does not fetter our home to school transport policy, which members have approved in Neath Talbot, which in the past I know you've been personally aware of, doesn't change their entitlements at all. So I know that's sort of cold comfort, but it's at least it's some comfort. We're not taking anything away from somebody who is entitled to support with home to school transport at the moment.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Reynolds, please.
I will agree with Peter that the biggest issues we get at the moment as councillors, one of the biggest ones is home to school transport. For me, it's much more a case of being very unhappy with the alternatives that they're offered in terms of, and for many of its children who've got more special needs and more issues than straight home to school transport. However, my question that I wanted to put forward here is, when the review of home to school transport was first muted, one of the things that I was quite worried about was the use of external consultants and the fact that we needed to be able to have those sorts of skills. We needed to be able to do that within the team. I now have Rhiannon saying that the review could result in us losing more staff, and my concerns around that then heighten, and further use of external consultants in that process. So I am worried that we are outsourcing jobs.
Don't think that's what Rhiannon said, to be fair. So if there's any, I'm glad you've asked the question, because let's clear this. The review of home to school transport is not resulting in any job losses. In fact, arguably quite the reverse, because it's meant to save money, so to avoid job losses. And what was the second? So we're not using consultants further, so there's no further externalization. So we're not using, whatever the contract says is what the contract is. We're not engaging consultants further, and we're certainly not making people redundant as a result of the education transport review.
So
sorry if you had that impression.
Rhiannon's comments were about all three proposals then.
Probably where the confusion came. Yeah,
right,
there are some minor staffing adjustments, and right now we are confident that none of those will be compulsory redundancies.
Yeah, Rhiannon, if you want to.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, perhaps that was a bit misleading. In my head, I operate three different services. I've got the transformation bit, the support services bit, and the employability and skills bit, and that's why I broke it up like that. And the reorganisation is mainly around the transformation area and a little bit in employability. So it has no relevance to the transport review at all. I can categorically agree with Andrew on that one. That helps.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Reynolds.
I could see the phone ringing and people not being able to get in touch with others and not being able to resolve the problems because there weren't people on the team. And I wondered if just following on from that, whether I could be cheeky and just ask whether having said, our staff, whether how much our staff would gain from that experience and learn, has that process from the review with the external consultants, has that process happened?
There's corporately, we're looking at the way this contract is working. I today I couldn't tell you whether I'm simply not close enough to you, and probably Dave Griffiths would be because he heads up that in the environment director. So that, if you like, the nuts and bolts bits of this, the tendering, the commissioning, the checks, with the appointing the contractors is all done by the environment directorate. So probably you'd be better off asking that question of Dave Griffiths, either through attending a scrutiny committee, in the environment directorate, or maybe just to contact him direct.
I have had a conversation with Brendan Griffiths, and my concern is that consultants have done what consultants can often do, which is pick the brains of the people who operate things and then write them up in a nice format. And that would be my concern here.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Woolford, please.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Councillor Reynolds has kind of preempted one of the questions I was going to ask. It was on the consultants and the engagement of them. And I've asked this question before in other arenas. Have we monitored what they're doing? And at this stage, do we actually know how much savings they've given us? I believe they're probably halfway through their contract now. Their 3-year contract, and they must be a year and a half in, or a year in, over a year in.
I don't think it's, and the reason I'm vague is because I didn't contract the consultants. As I say, this was done by.
I've had discussions with David Griffiths, and I believe, because I was involved in something to do with this, and I believe they're over a year in by now. And I have asked before how they're going to be monitored. And if we do know if they are making any savings, because they have cost us quite a bit of money to engage. And my understanding from David is it wouldn't be practical to disengage them now, because it would probably cost us money in the contracts anyway to do that. However, if we are engaging external consultants, we need to make sure that they are presenting the savings that they promise, when they open those contracts.
I think maybe the best thing is if we maybe ask Dave Griffiths if he can either provide us with an update, the answers, or if he can attend one of our scrutiny committees to just go through this in a bit more detail. I think that's the best, if you're happy with that, Councillor Woolford. And
yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, I'm on the environmental committee as well, scrutiny committee, so I will ask those questions in that committee. But seeing educational transport came up here, I thought maybe there would be some answers here for those questions.
I can understand why you would ask those questions here, without doubt, because it's a bit of an unusual situation where the budget is held by education and the strategy is held by education, because the homeschool transport budget is something which is compiled by ourselves and comes to this committee and then went to cabinet previously. But as I say, the mechanism, if you like, of engaging and consulting and appointing contractors, etc., is done by the environment. So there are two directorates. One holds the budget and the strategy. The other one, if you like, does all the commissioning and the procurement. So it doesn't matter where we report this. The main thing is members are cited on it. So I think you raise a good point.
Thank you. So just one more question. The savings that are being put forward through the Educational Directorate regarding transport, have they taken into consideration what the Edge consultants have promised? Or have the, is that the savings that they've promised going to be on top of savings that have been put forward already?
The savings in the forward medium-term financial plan are the ones that the consultant said could be achieved.
Okay, so at the moment, as far as we're concerned, they are prospective savings, but we don't know if they've been achieved.
Correct.
okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions? Councillor Nathan Goldup-John, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think I just would like to also reflect my concern with the home to school transport review, but that'll flesh itself out, I'm sure, when we see the full detail. My concern is more so with the pupils that this might impact, rather than actually the flesh and bones of the proposal itself. So when that's concluded, could we see that shared with members, please? And then my second question is just with regards to ELLI, the primary school cleaning. Have we done any modelling just in case the primary schools decide, actually, you know what, we're not going to do it with the LA, we're going to find a consultant, and therefore do we actually not hit that target because the schools have left the system? So just those 2 points, please. Thanks.
Thank you. Rhiannon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have. We did some extensive modelling last year, in particular when we thought it was going to be the full, I don't know where I'm looking, sorry. When we did the full, we thought it was going to be the full recharge last year. So yes, we have done that modelling and we've looked at how much is going to cost each school and the implications of that. We've got a really good cleaning manager, or AMS operations manager, who has been out to speak to the primary schools, spoke in the head teachers group and explained what we offer as a service over and above what the schools are actually paying for. So, for example, if there's an outbreak of, I don't know, novavirus or something like that in a school, our teams are in there within minutes of getting the call. They sanitising the room. They're doing everything they need to do. If they go to an independent person, they won't get that type of service. And I think our schools are quite loyal, but they're also quite astute. They realise the extras that they're getting as part of that deal. And the answer is, really, we can't force the schools to stay with us, but we hope that we can demonstrate enough that we are absolutely behind them all the way on this, and that we will try and support wherever we can, despite them having to pay the full cost. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Rhiannon. Much appreciated.
Thank you. And Andrew, please.
Thanks, Chair. If I could just add a little bit of context to that discussion. So when we discussed this particular savings strategy in corporate directors, I made it very clear that this and what happens on the 30th of October may change what I'm about to say, but I was very clear that we could only put forward this particular savings strategy if we didn't ask the schools to provide an efficiency saving. Because if you notice, all the directorates are coming forward with their budget proposals, but there's nothing in there to cut in the delegated schools budget. And the reason for that is, and some of that we've discussed already today, the pressure school budgets are under, and that this applies to primaries, secondaries, and specials, because our cleaning service does clean school, all primaries, both special schools, both special schools and 1 or 2 secondary schools. So this, this £370,000 is spread across, a range of sectors. But if we got to the position where we couldn't balance the budget and we had to cut delegated schools budget, in my opinion, it would be wrong-headed to cut delegated schools budget and impose this £317,000 efficiency. For me, it's one or the other. Now, the 30th of October might make it so problematic that we may have to change that, but that's what I stand at the moment, because, we are headed toward something like 33, how many? It's something like 33 of our schools will be in deficit by the end of this financial year. Asking them to find any more savings when they're in that position, I think, I just don't think it's tenable, to be honest. So that's, even though £317,000 is a budget cut, it's the only budget cut at the moment that we are referencing towards the delegated schools budget.
Thank you. Councillor Cabinet Member Nia Jenkins, please.
Thank you. I wasn't going to come in at this point, but as you're talking about delegated school budgets, I'd like to bring something up. I don't know if people are aware, but Neath Talbot Council funds per pupil probably one of the lowest in Wales. Certainly from secondary school, we're actually last but one, only Wrexham gives less money per head. Now, over the last 2 years, we've increased the delegated school budget by 7.9 and 8.4, which may sound great, but if you're starting from a low level, it's not actually doing that well. We know that pupils that come from deprived areas, they're more likely to not be in education, they're more likely to have lower academic achievement, they're less likely to attend in schools, all the things that we're trying to target through this scrutiny committee. And when you look at, for example, Blaenau Gwent is recognised as the most deprived area for childhood poverty. They actually give overall £200 per pupil more than we do. But if you look at specifically secondary education, we're £800 less than them. And I really think we need to look, you know, we've historically underfunded our delegate schools budget. We need to concentrate on our pupils because they will be, if we lose them during school, they will be the problems of the future. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Diolch yn am hwnna. Okay, do we have any further questions on Rhiannon's budget lines? No, I can't see any. So we'll move on to Chris Millis, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've been recently approached by Welsh Government to second one of our key staff for 2 days a week on a secondment to Welsh Government to support curriculum. So that's where the saving is from. So his work's been shared between a few of us, and we're taking advantage of that saving against his wage.
Great, thank you. Any questions, members? No, I don't see any. Diolch, Chris. Andrew, we've got the next one, pensions and early retirement.
This is probably the easiest one across the council, because this is a budget which is in place for all those people who were lucky enough to have early retirement back in the day. So these are legacy costs for early access to pension costs, and unfortunately, the cost only comes down as people pass away. So there's nothing we can do about this budget. It's just something that will reduce over time. So quite clearly, we get these figures from Swansea Pension. Unfortunately, obviously, some member who's claiming benefits previously has sadly passed away, and therefore that budget will have reduced in terms of the early access to pension costs. So it's quite sad. Are you declaring an interest? So, yeah.
It was kind of you to take that budget line, Andrew. Any questions?
Grim Reaper.
No, great. So moving on to Hayley Lurvy, please. Thank you.
Okay, diolch, Chair. You can see 2 posts there are offset against our ALN grant, the P post and the Learning Difficulties team member of staff there undertaking some work in that area. And the Specialist Commission from Schools, some funding was secured to undertake some work with secondary schools. As part of that, from my service area, we were looking at occupational therapy. We commission in anyway from health, but this is to do a specific piece of work with older children, specifically with emotional, social, emotional and behavioural difficulties. So we've offset that again against that funding for this year. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Diolch, Hayley. Do you have any questions, please? Councillor Reynolds, please.
So just in terms of the offset against grants, did those grants exist before, and did they pay for anything that's going to be lost because it's now offset against staffing costs?
The grants have existed, yes, they have, and we review them every year. So obviously things will drop in as we complete pieces of work, and we'll take on new pieces of work. So they do, but no, nothing else will be affected because, as I say, we review them. Some pieces of work are short term, some longer term, and that's how we've managed to work these posts in around that.
So it's getting rid of additional that you wouldn't be able to do without the grant and making it more core in that case.
Oh, sorry, can you explain that again to me?
Well, you know, if you're offsetting the cost against a grant, then they must be posts that you need, or are they posts that existed, or are they, you know, how are you making a saving by offsetting against the grant unless you're covering someone who's doing something else and keeping them in post?
They are yes, but some of these are temporary hours. So the learning difficulties is an additional day. So we've we funded that to do some additional work, and this member of staff is involved in things like person-centred planning, which is all part of ALN reform and training around that. So we're very careful, obviously, when we look at this, that everything is sustainable and everything we review as we move through. So yeah, no issues in terms of not covering work.
If you remember, in my introduction, I said we are basing these proposals on a couple of assumptions, and one of those assumptions is the grants that we have currently continue. So that is one of those risks. If, as a result of what happens on the 30th, they just slash and burn, then we'll have to, obviously, we have to rethink. But you are right. Generally, when we cover core costs against a grant, so we are covering, with part of their people's wages, inevitably there will be less work in terms of what the grant funds. So we only ever do it where it's allowed. So we don't flout or flaunt, rather, whoever the grant awarding body is. But inevitably there will be less work. But as I said, our guiding principles were to protect public services as far as possible and protect jobs as far as possible. So it's a necessary evil. We've been doing it a while, and to be honest, we will get to a point where we can do it no longer, because we are simply, we've maxed out our ability to put core costs against grant. We're not quite there yet.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions on that, please, members? No, I don't see any. So we'll move on to Kerry Morris, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got 5 proposals just to quickly run through, and these all relate to the Public Protection Service, which is the environmental health, training standards and health protection service areas. None of these proposals are particularly easy. They are, though, a mixture of income generation ideas, some trimming and reduction of various budget lines, but unfortunately they do include 3 which are quite difficult, unpalatable choices, which ultimately will affect posts and ultimately service delivery. But very briefly from me, the first one relates to the pest control service. What we've identified there, and an increased income target of 9,000, and in light of the current levels of demand that the service is inviting, and indeed the performance of the team, we feel that there is the potential to achieve that increased income target without actually increasing fees, which is an important point, because we did increase fees last year within that service. And it's always a balancing act when you do increase fees, that you don't increase them to a point where it starts to turn people away from using our service. The second one is relates to the pollution control area, and that's going to be delivered. 11,000 there is going to be delivered through a recharging of officer time, and a slight reduction in a materials budget for Giant's Grave. There is a potential impact on the planning development management service, because obviously environmental health officers are consultees as part of the planning process, but we feel that those costs will be easily absorbed within the planning service, because particularly with these major schemes that come forward, the service is quite active in setting up planning performance agreements with developers as they come forward, so we can certainly claw back those additional costs as part of that process. Moving on then to the third one, which relates to the trading standards service. There's an identified saving here of around 20k, and that's going to be delivered, or the proposal will be delivered through the deletion of a career grade opportunity that currently exists within the structure, and a trimming of the professional fees budget that the team uses for barrister court proceeding costs. Clearly there are implications with this particular proposal, because this does really undermine any succession planning plans that the service has in place, and it will certainly undermine those going forward. And of course, any reduction in the services specific professional fees budget may then ultimately mean that we might need to turn to the corporate centre when the service is dealing with particularly complex prosecution cases going forward. So there are potential implications there. The fourth one relates to the General Environmental Health Service, and this one it covers around 43k, and that's actually a deletion of a post within the service. It's obviously not somewhere that any of us want to go, but we have limited choices because this particular budget line is vastly and predominantly staff costs. Members will probably already be aware that the service is already struggling to deal with the statutory regulatory services that it provides, and indeed it has already stopped delivering some sort of discretionary statutory services. So there is, a potential big impact should that proposal ultimately find its way through. The last one to touch on is relates to the Food and Health Protection Service. We do have a current vacant part-time post within the structure. It's 0.6 of a full-time equivalent. But the funding for that particular post was earmarked again for succession planning purposes, whereby the post was going to be converted to a trainee EHO post. And given the difficulties with recruiting, that was seen as very much a way of sort of trying to overcome those issues. So again, in the longer term, that'll undermine those succession planning sort of aims. So that's the summary, Chair. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr. Any questions, please, members? Councillor Reynolds, please.
It's not really a question on the items, Kerry. I just wanted to ask if this committee could actually, if these issues are going to stay with this committee for forthcoming years and we've got to deal with them, I feel absolutely at sea trying to, understand, not having been aware. The colleagues that I have who have been involved with these are in other committees. So would it be possible for this committee to have a decent amount of updating and training about these issues? So a one-off session going through the issues that we're dealing with and how those format, how the team lays out what the issues are, where we are, because that way at least we can give it some meaningful scrutiny if that's what we're supposed to do. Thank you.
I'm happy to take that on board, Councillor Reynolds, and myself and my two accountable managers, Mark Thompson, Kelvin Davis, would be more than happy to come along and give a presentation if that's what the chair would agree.
Yep, certainly. And Pamela, we okay to arrange that and try and fit it in the diary? Thank you. Diolch. Any other questions, please? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Councillor Nathan Goldif-John, please.
I'm just talking too much, I get it. It was just one, well, actually three. It was ENVX to Z. Ken and I have discussed this at length as well. More of an observation rather than anything, and I'm sure Ken's fed this back to Kerry as well. But they kind of feel like responsibilities that are required to ensure that the service meets a certain standard, and without having, well, to be fair, everything that Kerry's proposed feels like it's needed to meet a certain standard with his department, but it's just kind of, it feels like it's already a stretched department at the moment, and by making even further cuts, it doesn't feel like it's going to meet its statutory duties, let alone go above and beyond. So it was more an observation more than anything, but I think it's just an example of we're in really tough times at the moment. So the 30th of October better bring some good news, I suspect. Thanks.
Diolch. Councillor Alan Llywelyn, please.
Ie, diolch yn fawr Cadeirydd am cael dod mewn fel aelod o'r cabinet i'r cyfarfod scrutiny. Thanks very much, Chair, for allowing me to comment as a cabinet member. And just picking up on the last item first, I suppose, I know historically that the environmental health issues have been reported here, but I'm not sure that quite sits with the directorate structures anymore. So perhaps we need to take a look at, taking on board what Sonia said now about the need for understanding and training and everything. Perhaps we need to take another look at where the issues are reported, to be honest. But nonetheless, I'm grateful to colleagues for scrutinising the items here. In terms of the budget issues in general, obviously we're facing very, very difficult times. And looking back at the whole of the budgeting report, if I may, Chair, is that okay if I make a few comments?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
There we are, Grant. I mean, I think that Cabinet Member Neath Jenkins sort of hit the nail on the head in a way, looking at the historic patterns of spend on the delegated schools budget. I tried to come in on that point, by the way, but my electronic hand wasn't working. But obviously, we're inheriting a situation where our schools budget has not been sufficient in comparison with other authorities historically. And you know, as the current administration, we've become aware of that very recently. We need to try and turn that around. But obviously, the current situation is not the best circumstances for doing that, given the continued austerity. We do have. This is all against the background or the overall local government settlement from Welsh Government, and of course that also depends on what the overall settlement will be from the UK government in next week's budget. So I think we have to keep on making our views known and our representations known that we need to have the proper investment into public services at UK level, at Wales level, and of course then at Neath Talbot level. Otherwise, the issues that we're looking at will be continuously unpalatable. So I would hope that all colleagues across the chamber would continue making representations wherever they can. We are grappling with some historic issues here, as you've seen, has been highlighted today, which we should become aware of about our historic spending levels on schools. If we are going to turn that around, we need to be able to have more resources to do that, and also obviously to maintain all the services that we've been talking about this afternoon. So I hope that point is taken on board across all of the chamber.
Thank you. Diolch. Councillor Reynolds, please.
Thank you. I wanted to comment anyway, but just coming back on what the Deputy Leader has said, it's clear that the change to scrutiny was only made last year, and that's why it's been a problem. We've been, you know, I've been talking about this ever since and objecting to it ever since. But if we're going to be stuck with it, we might as well know what we're talking about and be able to do it properly. It's not historically been with this committee, and we need to acknowledge that. So, and it doesn't fit. So it's an odd and a really peculiar situation put in train by the current administration. Now, what I was going to ask as well about the schedule for the budget consultation. And I wanted an answer from Hugh, if possible, or relevant person, about exactly what happens next after this, because I'm aware, and as people will know from previous scrutiny committees where we've gone through this, it is clear that we haven't got detail here. We just, you know, we're dealing, and the devil is always in the detail in these things, and no impact assessments, I was given to understand at the last scrutiny committee I was in, had been done as yet. Staff have not been consulted. It's you know, there's a minefield out there waiting to happen, and this has obviously got to go to public consultation, and I understand the administration are trying quite realistically to get things out to public consultation earlier than we were able to last year. So, you know, I'm not objecting to that. I just want to know how we come back on this, how we get that, and at what stage there will be the possibility of looking at this again, with that detail, with that impact assessment, and with the information to go forward on. So that's the question. I would also like to ask, as an additional information piece that perhaps Andrew could supply to us, I'm aware that the per pupil funding situation in our local authority is not as simple as that makes it sound, that we have a different way of working, and we also what's been inherited was also a high standard of schools at that point. So, it's not as simple as that overall figure makes it sound. And it would be good to have an explanation of that in pupil, that per pupil funding provided to members of this committee.
Just on that, there's Rhiannon, there's a report on school budgets coming to scrutiny on December the 4th. Yeah. 5th, early December. Anyway, so I think the information that you're looking for will be in there.
Okay, thank you. So we've discussed obviously the training issue and that's all in hand with Pamela. And who did you want to come in as regards to the timings? I know we're really keen to, obviously this is the earliest I think that we've ever had the actual budget lines. So, we do want as many members as possible to, keep engaging with the budget, but I think it'll be helpful if you outline the timetable. Diolch.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So just to say, this is the first time we've ever done this, and certainly since I've been involved for the last 6 years. So these proposals were with Democratic Services by the end of September to be considered by Cabinet in October. As Andrew said, they are in the early thoughts in terms of how directors plan to meet their targets. They're based on a whole range of assumptions. We are very much in the dark because you've got the budget next week. It was my view it would be helpful to come to scrutiny committees to talk through, for members to listen, to ask questions that have been done today, to suggest alternatives to help shape the final proposals. Now, if the general view of all members of council is it's not been helpful, then we'll go back to doing it the way we've always done it before, and members will see things for the first time in December. But I thought it would be helpful. If it's not, then I apologise if it hasn't been. The process from now on in is that we will consider as officers what's been discussed. We will wait, obviously, for the budget next week. Hopefully, we will have an idea as to what that means in terms of consequentials for the Welsh budget. What we won't know is what that means for the local government settlement, and we won't know that until the middle of December. So therefore, we'll have to, again, take views around that. We will be back in front of Cabinet on the 11th of December for a special Cabinet meeting. That report will include more detail in terms of the proposals that officers are proposing to take forward into the formal consultation process. They won't have individual impact assessments at that point because the consultation will then determine what we actually take forward in terms of the final proposals, where there will be an impact assessment. So there will be a scrutiny committee meeting for this scrutiny committee on the 16th of January to give members a chance to ask officers more questions. And again, in usual fashion, the consultation will end on the 17th of January. So it's a just over 4-week consultation period, except in that takes over Christmas, but it's longer than it's been for the last 3 years. Again, officers will take views and feedback and come up then with final proposals for Cabinet to consider at the end of February. And again, what we've got doing this year, which we haven't done for the last few years, is we are giving a week then between Cabinet and Council to make sure that there are opportunities, if there are changes to be made at Cabinet, before Council consider the full Council tax. So, as I said, Chair, it was supposed to be a helpful process to engage members early. I don't think any council is out at the moment in terms of this level of detail. But once we've finished the process, we will take stock and ask members, and then obviously decide whether we do something similar next year. Just to mention to members as well, there is a budget training session, all-member seminar planned for the 28th of November. That's being delivered by the WLGA, so people have got a chance to hear a different voice to mine in terms of when we talk about finance. So hopefully that will be helpful for members then when we get into the formal process. But thank you, Chair. That's all I wanted to say. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr, Hugh, and I, for one, am very, very grateful to receive this information early, and I think...
Implied criticism, Chair. I didn't think I criticised. I was just asking for information. No criticism at all.
Okay. Sorry.
It's good to see it. It's just needing the wider information. So what's the next iteration was the question.
Yeah. I think it's always the difficulty with the budget because we don't get the information until the very last minute, and then we're grappling with major issues here. But I thank you everyone for your contributions this afternoon. I think it's been really useful in terms of for members and for officers as well. So diolch yn fawr for that. So we'll note that information and the comments made by members on the budget. So we move on with part 2 of the agenda. Agenda item 5 to consider items for the Scrutiny Committee Forward Work Programme. And the report Service Plans for Education, Leisure and Lifetime Learning Directorate on pages 147 to 231. Do officers have anything to add to the report?
Not at the moment, Chair. It was requested to show the golden sort of thread between what sits below the Directorate Improvement Plan and how it links to the Corporate Improvement Plan. There are 5 service improvement plans picked from the 4 heads of service. We're happy to take questions on if there are any, but it's just to show for information what sits below Directorate Plan and what feeds into corporate.
Lovely. Diolch yn fawr. We do have a question. Councillor Reynolds, please.
Sorry about this. Yeah, it's one specific question, and that's there's talk about coffee mornings for, and I'm really pleased to see in the engagement with the homeschooled children, the elective homeschool children, and I wondered what the level of engagement in those was, please, because it is a worry, the numbers that are increasing and the lack of monitoring and overview.
Certainly, Chair. So the average number is 30 to 40 families attend each session. The sessions are jointly run, so it's not just us doing it. We work in partnership with health, police, Careers Wales are in there, the college come to it as well, and they do a variety of road shows. So, for example, knife crime, scooter safety, internet safety, learning through play, immunisation, anything that some of these families may not get through being in a school system.
Yeah, that's great. What percentage of the sort of population of EHE children is that? Do we know? I know we haven't got a register and it's an issue.
No, I wouldn't know a percentage mark on it. And of course, this could be the 30, 40 families that come every time. Not necessarily the ones that we would really like to see, but at the moment we follow Welsh Government guidance. If we build it, they will come.
Thank you, Chris. And the other was, I was just simply for my help, I was baffled by the risk assessments in this and how they're done and how they read. I couldn't make head or tail of them. So perhaps, a bit of an explanation around that would be helpful.
Andrew?
Just in terms of the what confuses you about?
We've got a risk identified, long-term absence of key staff, and we've got dates and we've got colours, but there's no feel of improvements, what's happening, what's being done about them. There's none of the feel in my of the normal risk register. So I was just looking, how are they used to monitor? How are they used to underpin?
The service risks are obviously managed. There's a hierarchy, as I'm sure you'll be aware. So there are service improvement plans for all the accountable managers within the directorate, and they will have they will assess the risks within the various teams, if you like. They get aggregated up into coordinator service improvement plans, which get aggregated up into the directorate risk register. The director.
Sorry, Andrew, I won't trouble you to go through all of that, because I understand that. It was just how they're written here. The easy thing to do would be perhaps to sit down with Chris or somebody and say, just explain that to me, will you?
What?
Because as soon as
how the risk is determined, is that what you mean?
No, how they're actually documented,
or what they're saying
on this, and how I can use them to work out what's being done and how it's impacting.
Yeah, we will pick that up with you. Yeah.
Lovely. Diolch yn fawr. Any further questions? No, I don't see anyone. So this report is for noting. So diolch, thank you very much. Agenda item 6, performance monitoring. There are no items to be considered at this meeting. Agenda item 7, selections of items for future scrutiny. Pamela, would you like to give us an update on anything added, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just go through some of the changes that we've had to the Cabinet and Scrutiny Forward Work programmes. members will have had sight of the Cabinet and Scrutiny forward work programmes in the agenda pack, but as always, there are some changes. So the Education Leisure Lifelong Learning Strategic Development Plan, that has moved on the Cabinet forward work programme from the 13th of November to the 5th of February. And therefore, with the agreement of the Chair, it has moved from the Scrutiny forward work programme that was today to January 2025. Margam Park Business Plan, that has moved from, sorry, I don't know when it was on there, but it's moved to January 2025. And it's also moved on the Scrutiny forward work programme from today to the 5th of December. Corporate Plan Annual Report 23-24 has been added to the Cabinet forward work programme, and it will be coming to our Scrutiny Committee on the 5th of December, as well as all the other Scrutiny committees. We've mentioned this report earlier, the school budget pressures. As Andrew mentioned, it's coming to Scrutiny on the 5th of December. And then there's 2 items added to the Cabinet forward work programme. They will be coming to Cabinet in January. The first one is the Flying Start Expansion Phase 3 report. Now, members won't be aware of this report. I just want to check today if you want to select that for scrutiny. The other is the Country Parks Car Park Review. And again, it's been added to Cabinet 15th of January. So it's up to members if they want to select that for scrutiny. I believe officers are here today, so if you want any more information on those reports, they may be able to provide that for you.
Thank you, Pamela. Do we have any observations, members? Hayley, do you want to just give us a brief on the Flying Start so we can have a think? Yeah, thank you.
So Flying Start Phase 3 expansion, we have been waiting to hear from Welsh Government regarding any possible funding. We have had now confirmation that we are going to be looking at planning for Phase 3. It's very short timescales. We've been asked to give a plan in by the second week of December. So we have contacted Welsh Government to say that we will put something together, but with a caveat that it needs to come to members through scrutiny, and Cabinet is subject to change. It is a challenge because they haven't given an indication of funding. So they've asked us to put a plan together without knowing what the funding will be for this. So we're a little bit working in the dark and working with numbers that we have. But we thought it is of interest because obviously the next phase will be rolling out across Neath Talbot over the next couple of years. But because it's short notice and we've been waiting on this, we thought members would be interested in having sight of this in scrutiny, so which is why we brought that paper forward. Diolch.
Thank you. I would certainly like to see some detail, but whether I know you're working in such tight deadlines as well. So any thoughts from members, please? Oh, Councillor Nathan Goldif-John, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, agree with you on the Flying Start report. And also, Pam, did you say about car parking charges?
Yes, there's a report on the Country Parks Car Park Review. So that's going to Cabinet in January.
Is that because we've got country parks in our committee? Is it?
Yeah, it's
right, okay.
comes under this portfolio, yeah.
I think, well, that should be scrutinised really, shouldn't it? If we're going to put them up or put them down, regardless, we're going to have to scrutinise something like that. I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I'm sure that would be only right and proper.
Yeah, I agree, Nathan. It's just the Flying Start one I'm really grappling with at the moment. Any other thoughts? Oh, and the other issue we have is that we have 11 reports so far on the 5th of December.
Can we ask that officers, if there's information about funding and there's real possibilities of thoughts and decisions and discussions around that, then that would be useful. Otherwise, maybe we can look at it in the Cabinet papers when they come out, and we'll worry about we need to know what the funding implications are really.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do that and let you know as soon as it's what I'm concerned about is we have to give some information or a quite detailed report on where we think the next areas are going to be. So we have to submit that ahead of knowing what the funding is, and it's whether members would like to see that report before.
We would like to see that, I think.
I think, yeah, as soon as that information is available, we'd be grateful for sight of that, if that's possible.
Would you like that report to come to scrutiny, because that's what we'll be submitting to Welsh Government, just to confirm?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
When does the report need to go to Welsh Government?
It needs to go to Welsh Government by the 13th of December, and we've been in touch with Pam already to try and organise a date for it to come to scrutiny. It was just confirmation about members having sight of it.
So which scrutiny committee will that come to? 13th? Or December?
Yeah.
All right, okay. Yeah, because it'll need to be prepared 3 weeks in advance.
Right, we might be pushed with that, but we'll have the bone. We've got.
Okay, well, I think what I'm concerned about is the way the internal timetable works at the moment. You might think the 5th of December is a while off, but if we've got to prepare reports 3 weeks in advance, and we just simply might not have the details. So I think all we can do is work with our internal timetables and give you whatever information we've got at that time. And then if it needs to be revised post decision, post decision scrutiny, then then so be it. Either way, members will have the information. It's just with Welsh Government not giving us the budget, the timetable with the committees and how far in advance these reports are going to be prepared, it's just becoming a little bit difficult to tie the three things together. That's all. So we'll give you whatever we've got, and if we've got to give you more information, after, then that's what we'll do.
And also, I think we have discussed it before. If it needs to be a verbal update, that's absolutely fine as well.
Thank you. No, that would be really helpful. We have got quite a clear criteria from Welsh Government in terms of the areas we need to be prioritising, and obviously there are a number of factors involved there. So we will definitely have something to bring to you before we submit it. But no budget. Not knowing whether we'll be signed off with it or not.
Okay. Good. So we're placing both those items on for the 5th of December. Councillor Reynolds.
Can I just ask that the Democratic Services Officer, Pam, thank you, can inform members of this committee which Environment and Regeneration and Street Cleaning Services Committee the home to school transport item is going to, so that members can attend should they wish to?
Yes, certainly, I can do that.
Yeah, Pamela.
Yeah, I just want to point out to members that some of the reports go into the next scrutiny meeting in December are post scrutiny reports. So I can draw your attention to those cabinet reports prior to our scrutiny meeting, which will sort of ease the reading requirements of you. So I will let you know when those cabinet reports for the post decision ones are published.
Lovely, thank you. Diolch yn fawr. Agenda item 8, urgent items. I have no urgent items. So thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions today. Diolch yn fawr and safe journey home. Diolch.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.